Welcome to the Human First Executive Show. I'm your host, Rob Kalwarowsky. And as always, we have a couple amazing special guests with us. We have Rasmus Holst and Robin Daniels, two of the Human First Executives of Zensai. Guys, how are you doing?
Doing great.
Really
Envious
great.
of your background, Dave.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right for folks out there. So Zensai is based in Copenhagen, and so that's where Rasmus is. Robin is calling in from the beautiful Wisconsin.
That's right.
Go Badgers. And of course, it's just February.
I basically split my time between Denmark and Wisconsin, which is not bad, except that both places are really cold. I wish I was in Costa Rica right now where you are. That sounds absolutely lovely. Maybe one day.
That's right. Eventually when you get there. Now, of course, one of the things that foundationally builds Zensai is this element or this core philosophy of human success. So maybe, Robin, can you tell us a little bit about human success? And then how are you using AI to sort of help your people build that in their businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me first take a step back a little bit and just tell you how we conceived of this idea. So Rasmus and I, we connected a few years ago. And one of the things that we both felt throughout our careers is that there hasn't really been any platform that's fully focused on making people the best that they can be every single day. Not in the way that truly promotes cohesion, belonging, connectedness, togetherness, but also the sense that you're constantly getting better and better and better. HR platforms is oftentimes focused on the managers or the companies to get the information they need so they can manage their employees, make sure they're compliant and staying within the boundaries and so on. It's useful, but it's not really inspiring. And so we said there has to be a better way. And especially when we looked at the data, then it says how miserable people really are in their daily jobs. Over the last couple of decades, that number, if you look at Gallup or McKinsey, if anybody else says 2 out of 3 people want to quit their jobs, now it's up to 79% of people saying they're disconnected or not happy at their work. And we said, what a tragedy. Those people are not showing up every single day doing the best work of their lives. How can we change this trend? Because if you have people who are motivated and engaged and learning and growing, they'll feel better about themselves and their life and their place in the universe. But of course, the companies that they work for will also do better. So it's such a natural that this is so obvious, yet nobody has really honestly figured it out. So we said, well, let's change the narrative around what HR really is about and focus on how do we make humans the best that they can be every single day, what we classify as human success. And of course, we're not naive enough to think that a platform is the only way to solve this. You need the right leadership, philosophy, the right culture around it. But at some point, you also do need the right tools and the right platform to help make that happen in an organization. And that's, of course, where Zensai comes in. And so we've built this platform. We call it the Human Success Platform. And it's really focused on making people the best that they can be every day by giving them the skills, clarity, knowledge, and motivation they need to be successful and constantly driving towards better outcomes for the jobs that they're doing, but also for the future, because everybody has plans. In the next year, I want to be here. In the next 5 years, I want to be here. I want to grow my career. I want to make an impact and a difference and so on. And so the core of our platform is really centered around, are people learning the right things? Are they connecting with the right people and engaged in the work that they're doing? And are they clear on the goals that they have to hit every single day? So AI is a key part of that, because the more we can use AI to coach an employee on the skills they need to get, or the people they should connect with, or the goals that they should be setting themselves in order to constantly level up themselves, that's super powerful. So we use AI in a number of different ways in our platform, probably more than any other HR tech that's out there right now. It's been verified by Fosway, the industry analyst group. They said that we're far ahead of the curve. So we use it for manager coaching, for goal setting. We use it for making sure that people are getting what we call the right learning path or growth path, meaning you can have an employee who says, I'm a marketing manager today. In the next 5 years, I want to become a marketing director. Show me how to get here. What skills should I be learning? Who should I connect with? How should I level up? What courses should I be taking? We will map that out for you so that employee feels a sense of purpose, momentum, and movement. But of course, the company benefits tremendously because that employee is engaged, doing great work every single day, and so on. So that's what we're doing. We use AI in every part of our platform to make the human journey much more empowered for that employee.
I love that. Rasmus, can you share with us like a company or a case study that you've worked through and like what have they seen in terms of results?
Yeah, I think maybe adding on to Robin's AI thing and where we came from with human success, because it was a little bit of a rebellion against the HR and calling people resources and all of that. That was the origination story of it. But I think when Robin answered the how do we use AI, but I also think that looking ahead, humans and AI need to somehow coexist. And I do think that it's weird because Robin and I had the conversation of it's almost like human success was written for the age of AI, because you really need to figure out what are humans accountable for. I mean, they may have 10 agents working for them, but it's a human who's accountable to you or to Robin or all of that. So it's really an interesting breaking point where we invented the phrase in a different almost era, but we feel that it's becoming more and more relevant. And I think when you see what some of the organizations that pick up on human success, what they are able to do, we have a great case study with the Zone out in the market, and they basically see that when they start to have engagement and they start to do the performance reviews on the platform, then they start to have more learning, because people, and actually not the compliance learning, but the learning that is, I want to go from A to B, I want to push my own career. The manager conversations become a coaching conversation of, I want to invest in you, Rob. I would love to see you step up to vice president, or I would love to see you find that next step. And that becomes an embedded part of the culture, which the Zone again sees when they started to do all of those kind of things. And honestly, I think it's one of those things where if you're able to harness that as an organization, you also harness a feedback loop, which so many organizations have a hard time with. Because if I'm usually checking in with Robin and Robin is saying, hey, I'm doing great, I'm telling Robin, you did a great job on this, and we do that every week, you normalize feedback. And what most managers have really hard time is like, but Robin, you're not going to get that VP position because your presentation skills are not where they need to be. Can you work on this and this? Becomes a good conversation because it's not based on me showing up any given Thursday and giving him that feedback out of the blue because there was all of a sudden a VP position available. It's showing up because I've also praised Robin for he was amazing at running this particular project. He got amazing results out of that particular customer. And then we go, oh, but the next step actually requires you to move to this. You normalize the feedback in both good and bad, because I think that a lot of the negativity actually comes from we're really good as humankind. Actually, I don't think that's anything with leadership. Ask people for 5 things that's wrong with the company, and they will find those immediately. And then name 5 good things. Then start to go, oh, I like the lunch. And I mean, it takes longer just for anything to praise something positive. So I think normalizing that actually helps organizations also just be able to have those conversations in a much more normal in a much more positive way, actually.
And it's for those of you who don't know who DAZN is, they're basically the Netflix of sports streaming. They have over 300 million monthly subscribers, biggest in the world, and they have been using our platform now for a couple of years to really ensure that their teams level up. I was doing some research for a presentation I was giving at a conference recently, and I ran across a statistic that just blew my mind. It basically said that 92% of people in companies are unclear of what their goals really are or how they're measured against that. And you think about, it's so hard to do great work if you're unclear on what you're trying to do in the first place. It's really hard. But even worse than that, it also oftentimes then leads to toxic cultures, politics. So no wonder there's many reasons why I think people are disengaged, but if you're not clear on what you're trying to achieve or how you're being held accountable to the goals that you have or the actions that you have as a team and how the way you behave, it's very hard. But then it becomes just kind of every person for themselves. And that's not inspiring to anybody. That's also why you see so many people fed up, because they feel like they're living inside of these confines of a toxic environment that are just burning them out. And then they blame their boss. Maybe their boss, they say, I have an asshole boss. I know you've written a lot about this, Rob, as well. Or I have a culture that's not empowering me. But a lot of it comes down to if you're not clear on goals, behaviors, actions, all this stuff, then of course it becomes just every person for themselves. And it's just so uninspiring to everybody. So I think a lot of it starts there. And again, as I said, part of that is culture, leadership, but also you need the right tools. I mean, so oftentimes when companies do have goals, then it's like stuck in some Excel spreadsheet somewhere or in some PowerPoint file. I was like, how do you then align people against that? It's nearly impossible to do across a bigger organization. So you also need the right systems. Again, this is what we come in. So the zone that Rasmus was mentioning, they've really come far because now every single person in that company, I was just speaking to him yesterday, their chief people officer, every single person now has goals, individual, the team, the department, and ultimately that ladders up to the company, what they're trying to achieve. So they're all aligned. And of course, it just leads to, of course, better performance, but also just better culture.
It's funny, right? It's often what I run into is folks that think that being clear is not being empathetic. And so they don't set goals for their people and hold them accountable. But actually, when they do it, exactly what happens is what you're describing is, like, I had a client who did that, like, well, I think it was last year or the year before, but he felt like it was not supportive to do that. And then once you started defining, this is what I expect, this is what I want you to hit, people got happier.
So interesting. Wow.
And it's just
powerful.
Clarity, clarity just helps people thrive. And I think this is what you're bringing to folks.
I think if you look through sports coaches along the way, I'm sure that there are some of those where you would, if it was based on empathetic leadership skills, that's not what they're good at, but they're really good at setting a standard and being very direct with people who don't do what is expected of them. And sometimes that actually thrives. And my own personal story is that probably the CEO I've had that was the hardest on me and was like, hey, you're not good at this and you're not good at this. And Rasmus, can you stop blaming sales for everything? I was in product back then. You don't know what sales means. And he put me in sales. I went, I don't want to be there. I want to be a product dude. I'm much better here. And he went like, no, you need to learn what it means to not hit your number or not be able to call your forecast, or if you're not having enough leads and the clock ticks every week, every day. And that for me was like, if I've described it to other people at the time, I'll go, that's the worst experience in my life. If I describe it to people now, I'll go, that's probably the biggest learning moment. And nobody was kind in that setting. That was very direct feedback.
So, well, that brings up the point, right? And one thing that I talk a lot about, right, is exactly what you're mentioning with feedback is when I was training, I was expecting feedback from my coaches every practice and often all the time during practice, right? And it's something that, like, you guys, I think you posted this the other day on LinkedIn, but it was like in the corporate setting, the feedback happens on a 6-month or quarterly or annual basis. And you're missing that opportunity, not just for the improvement, but also there's another stat that I'm sure you guys love. It's like 50% of people haven't heard a good thing about their work in a year. And so it's like, we're missing an opportunity, not only to give people improvement, but also to thank them for the good job that they're doing.
Yeah, I think it's, I oftentimes liken it to, it's like a personal relationship. I've been married for over 20 years, right? And then, one day your wife says, in my case, my wife says, oh, this thing that you do with the toothpaste, it really bothers me. Can you not put it like that? And usually the response is, I wish you would have told me sooner so I could have done something about it. Instead of like festering on this, right? So the point is, it's the same in the corporate world. Like this idea of annual reviews is so antiquated. Like if there's something that I'm not doing well or I need to improve on for the health of my own career, but also for the health of the company and the team, tell me so I can go work on that. Like it's not valuable for me to find out 6 months or 9 months later. And so I did a survey on LinkedIn where I asked, how often do you want feedback? And I got hundreds of responses. And I said, do you want it weekly, monthly, quarterly, or yearly? And the majority, over 75%, said weekly or monthly. And it just goes to show there's a hunger because everyone has an intrinsic desire to become better and do better. Whether that's your hard skills or your soft skills, doesn't really matter. But then you feel like there's something to strive towards, which I think is very kind of much part of human nature. And if you do that every 6 months, every year, you just don't get that same feedback loop. It's very hard for the manager to action. It's super hard for the employee to action anything that was said that much later. And I think you miss a lot of opportunities to create actually closeness. So part of what we focus on is asking employees every single day. It's kind of like what the Zone does with our platform, but many other companies as well. Every single week, what's going well? What's not going so well? Is there anything that you want to highlight that could be done better? And how are you feeling, like on a scale? And those questions, it's very simple, like 3 or 4 questions you'll get. And they're meant to give you so much data and insights in a way that brings you closer together, this sense of belonging. So for example, me as a manager, because I'm so on top of what's happening in my organization, I never go, why are you not doing this? Or why are we behind here? I go with the mindset of, hey, I see that we're a little behind. How can I help? What can I unblock for you? How can I help strategize? Do you need more resources, more guidance? Are you too swamped with things? Could be a million different things, right? But the relationship between manager and employee becomes so much tighter because you have this instant or near instant feedback loop where it shows you're in it together. But it also, for the employee, gives them a tremendous amount of focus on making sure they're working on the right things. Because once you get to Friday afternoon or night and you think back on your week and you look back and you go, what did I actually do this week? And I'll tell you, I've been doing this for over 25 years. And the worst is when I get to Friday night and I felt really busy and I look back on my week and I'm like, not really sure I achieved anything. I was busy for being busy's sake, but I didn't move the ball forward on any of the big goals that I had. Those are the worst weeks because then I just feel like I'm spinning. And so this becomes a moment of self-reflection for the employee as well to go, am I actually focusing 80 or 90% of my attention on the things that matter the most? And if not, guess what? You can course correct. Nobody has a perfect week. I still have weeks every now and then where I'm like, I didn't achieve any of the things I really wanted to, but it becomes a moment of self-reflection where you hold yourself accountable, not just the manager holding you accountable. So it's very powerful that way.
And if I can add, Rob, just bringing it back to where we started with AI, just think of the oxymoron that we're going into a world where we say we can buy the code something in a week or a day or something like that. We can build a whole new application. Now take an annual review cycle. So you're reviewing somebody who can build 52 products in a year, let's say, if we're giving AI the benefit of the doubt here. You're reviewing them at the end of the year. I mean, Robin, we haven't used the phrase yet, but I actually love that Robin came to me at some point and said, what is actually the counter response to vibe coding? Is that vibe management? Is there a vibe management? And even without phrasing it like that, I think the weekly check-in and the weekly cadence gives you something different because it's also the score we put on top of it was also, you talked about your sporting career and coaches, right? Also, I wouldn't tell you how fit I was a year ago because you would go, Rasmus, that has no bearing. You've ate 900 pieces of candy since. So it's how do you get this into a vibe type management thing and it doesn't have to be overly constructed because I think that's what happens as well. Then it becomes constructed. I have to say something to Robin, right? There has to be 5 goods and 5 bads. Like, what were they for last year? So that's a lot easier because there's probably 5 things he did well and 2 things he did not so well this week. It's much easier to talk about.
That's right. That's right. And think about that's such a great example. Have you ever met an employee who goes, God, I look forward to that annual review. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait. I can't wait to fluff up my pillow and make myself look really great. I can't wait to see what my manager has to say about me. And I'm like, no, nobody likes that shit. It's horrible. And yet we still do it because we haven't seen a better way. We want to show a better way of doing this.
So one thing I want to ask, right, is like, so you guys did work you sponsored a bike racing team. Now,
yeah, we did.
What did that teach you about human success from, the business world and the sporting world?
First and foremost, let's put it this way. I think when we said yes to that, we didn't expect that the team would actually be as courageous and as genuinely amazing human beings as they were, because it was a 3rd-tier women's cycling team. They were striving, I should say, to get better and move up, but we weren't sure whether these were good on camera or anything like that. And I think if you shave everything off, it just comes back to, hey, we strive for some goals. We try to win as a team. Sometimes somebody crashes and it's ruining our whole season. Sometimes you need to step in because the leader wasn't available. And all of those stories actually resonated so very well. We didn't even have to kind of forced that it became a story about human success because the team was the story of human success. And we still haven't gotten all the way to next year's Tour de France and all of that. But the fact that we've had over 500,000 views by now, I'm still like, this is great. When you take that the Tour de France winner, previous Tour de France winner, Jonas Vingegaard and the Visma team, and they do a Tour de France video, it's seen by many people on YouTube. I'm still going, was it human success from the way we took the perspective of showcasing something that otherwise wouldn't be shown? I'll tell you, it's really difficult to try and sell the story to media afterwards and see if any other media will pick it up. We created our own platform and together with the team, and the team delivered what the story really was and very much aligned. And you obviously you see that it's the same thing. They have to talk when they're in the peloton. How do we win the race? And it's feeling good today, Robin. If he's not, it's on me. I mean, there's so many similarities between how you.
That's the nature of the time we're in right now, right? Is we can create our own media and our own stories and put it out to the world versus being the constraint. And it's just what you were talking about with vibe coding and vibe management, right? Is like, it's a whole new ball game these days.
Maybe it's vibe media at this point. But this is also where I think the sponsoring of the cycling team was so fun. I'm not into cycling. Rasmus is very into cycling, but I'm into humans and I'm into people empowering each other and becoming the best and being ambitious. And the cycling team certainly was. And I love telling the story of just how they were supporting each other, like Rasmus was saying, striving to become better and better and better. I mean, that was very aligned with what we're all about as a company, is trying to promote that idea. And I think the only way we promote that idea or get the world to know about it is by telling it in different ways. It's not just about talking about our software or platform, like, okay, right, that's part of it, but it's also really just talking about, well, what is this idea, the concept of human success, and how does it show up in reality? And I think the story of the women's cycling team is how it showed up in real life, that supporting each other, becoming better, the inner motivation, the inner fire that you have to constantly level up. That's what it was all about.
What would you say to those folks who they're leaders and they're like, my team's not motivated like I am?
It's a multi-layered question, but it's a great question to start with. First of all, you have to really kind of do a diagnostic of what is going on. It could be so many different things. That's why I hesitate to give like a simple answer because there's no simple answers in that kind of question. It could be everything from lack of clarity around goals. It could be the way that your team is set up. It could be that you don't have the right kind of philosophy of how you're holding people accountable. Maybe there's a lack of accountability in your company. I would get this question so often over the last couple of years that I ended up putting together kind of 5 core principles that are really around how do you create a high performance culture. And again, this is fairly general, but it applies, I would say, probably to the majority of companies. And so the 5 principles, really quick, are: number 1, everything starts with clarity. It's very hard to achieve great things for a company or a department or a team or an individual if you're not clear on what you're trying to achieve in the first place. Again, not only does it lead to subpar performance, but it also leads to, I think, toxic, fairly negative cultures. So clarity is everything. Start with that. Number 2 is really around focus. Once you have clarity on what you're trying to do and what you're not trying to do, that's a key part of it. You got to give people and teams space to focus on getting that shit done. Because if they keep getting distracted with other things, they'll get to the end of the month, end of the quarter, and be like, we didn't actually make really progress on this because we kept getting pulled into other things. And that's on you as a leader and a manager to ensure that that doesn't happen. But it's also, of course, you got to hold yourself accountable to that as well. Number 3 is around accountability. Is around making sure that you hold yourself accountable to a higher standard, but also that the team holds you accountable, your manager holds you accountable, but in a way that's, of course, compassionate and empathetic, not saying, why you're doing your job, Rob, but how can I help? How can we make sure that we're together reaching the goals that we set out? That's why the first one is the most important, because you can't hold people accountable if you're not clear on what you're holding people accountable. So number 3 is accountability. Number 4 is around this idea of urgency and tenacity, making sure that we continually move the ball forward, that we have an innate sense of urgency in the team to want to progress, that we're not just letting things slide. The best sports people, the best leaders, they all have this sense that we're constantly trying to push that we're not going to just wait for it to happen, but we're actually going to take ownership of that. And then the fifth thing, which I think is oftentimes forgotten, but it's equally important, is this idea of recognizing the great work that has been done from an individual or a team. Because oftentimes I've seen in cultures when you just kind of like, after a 6-month really intense project and you just instantly roll into the next one, people just start losing motivation. Like, nobody cares. I've worked my ass off for the last 6 months, but nobody's paying attention. Nobody's recognizing it. Stop to breathe, take a moment to recognize it. And sometimes it's the smallest things, like a high five, a nice email, a nice team message or a Slack message, or a nice little like, hey, here's a gift card for something. And sometimes it's a big thing, like you get promoted, maybe you get a bigger title, maybe you get more stock options, a bigger salary, and so on. But that actually is not that often. It's just like stopping to recognize in the work that either a person has done or a whole team has done. That just because what it does, it sets the bar higher for next time, because it shows that people are paying attention and people care. And it means that, okay, now you've done something really well, let's set the bar higher. And then that provides fuel and motivation for the people to always go further and further and further. But you start losing that if people stop recognizing that work. So those are kind of the five core principles.
So Rasmus, you were imparting this wisdom into the Denmark government. Now, how can we bring more human success to governments around the world?
You take that one.
It is probably one of the more difficult ones. I would say mostly when I get on stage with the ministers in Denmark, it's mostly to speak about how we actually create more success. So more growth opportunities for Danish companies. We are really good at inspiring companies to start. We're really not very good at keeping them at scale. And actually, if I take Robin's fifth point, one of the things I keep reminding everyone in Denmark about is that I am on the wrong side of 50. And when I started out, there was no startup community in Denmark. I would not even think that I could be part of something that looked like that. And today I have 25-year-olds who come and ask, hey, Rasmus, can you tell me some stories from your life? And can you help me? And all those kind of things, which to me is a success that people tend to forget. And again, as Robin said, then you gloss over it and it becomes like a nothing. I do think if I should, even though it was a tough question with the human success and how we're bringing human success to a government, the one thing that you want to be doing also in the government is that if you look at a population, I don't think it's anything different than a company per se. And if I apply what I preach in the company, I think it actually applies to the government as well. Because what we say is all of the values in the company are literally two. And they are human and their success. And you're responsible for being a good human, and you're responsible for every human feeling good around you. And if you start with that as a society, I think you've come far. And I don't think any society, just like a sports team, just like anything else, if you then also say that you're responsible for your own success, it doesn't mean that we lose the humanity and all of that. If you fall, somebody's going to catch you. But if you start with, I want to be successful in my own right, and I want to push that, but we also want to be successful as a team and as a nation, I think you get very, very far, because that blends the humanity and it doesn't diminish the drive that you have. And those are actually all of the leadership values we have in the company. It's the same as we sell, because I feel like you can, in those two sentences, explain being ambitious, but being ambitious without being an asshole. And most people will want to follow ambitious leaders. They want to be part of ambitious teams. They want to be ambitious on their own behalf, but they want to do it in an environment where they feel like, hey, I belong. I'm part of it. And genuinely, I think that probably comes out of a Danish upbringing where a lot of by two school teachers out in rural Denmark and all of that, where that was success was never really the goal, but being a great human was always a part of the upbringing. And then I think sports, everything out my way. It's really fun to be a good human, but it's also fun to win sometimes, and it does feel better as a team, and it does boost morale. I mean, I don't know if I'm now applying for being a politician, but I'm hoping.
That's right. I'm going to cut that out. Vote for Rasmus Holst in the next.
My God.
I'd vote for him.
Look, we Robin and I have friends in Denmark who've been from the startup and business community who went into politics, and the unfortunate thing, I think, is that it feels like that's you're pushing and nothing moves, right? at least they all went back out and went like, hey, I can't move this stuff. It takes too long, and things are measured in years. And if you have a cadence that's weeks, and just doesn't match. But we need people who think in years and decades, not just weeks when you run a government. Not sure I would be really great at it though.
So, Robin, as we start extending our timeline out into the future, like where do you see the future of AI technology and human success going?
Yeah, I think we're already on that journey right now. And I think that the next 3 to 5 years are going to be super exciting. And the reason why is because we have a vision where AI becomes a superpower for every employee to become the best they can be every single day and scale themselves in ways that wasn't even possible just a few years ago. And so they were already starting to see it, but most companies are not there yet. And so we have an opportunity to be both the platform, but also the educational part of that movement towards figuring out a world where humans and AI can coexist and how they coexist in the best optimal way. Because it's going to be so different per company based on what industry you're in, what size you are, what role you have in a company. But we have a real opportunity right now, I think, to be that platform that helps guide you towards that. Because the truth is, I think if you fast forward 5 or 10 years, I think every employee is expected to have a bunch of agents working for them at all levels. And of course, the promise of AI is that these agents are working for you 24/7. So when you're not working, they're working for you. So it allows you to scale yourself in great ways. And our platform will certainly be a part of that. Either help you create the agent, because you're gonna have agents in all kinds of systems, not just Zensai. All the platforms you will probably have agents. We will help you manage them, give you the insights around. So you think about what human success is about. It's about making people the best that they can be every single day. Well, if we think that agents are going to be like humans at some point, well, don't they also need to get trained and become the best that they can be every single day? Who's going to do that? Who's going to train an agent? Who's going to give them the skills, the motivation, the desire, the direction that they need to be successful every single day? An agent is not just a point in time that you created and you just forget about it. It just runs forever. It also needs constant management and coaching and direction. So there's a real opportunity for us, of course, to be that platform that does that, not just for humans, but also for agents and coexistence.
I'm just looking forward to being the asshole boss to my AI agents.
I'm sure it's going to happen. I'm sure. Honestly, sometimes when I look at my transcript to my chat, I'm like, oh, I can be a little curt sometimes. But okay, oh well. They haven't fought back yet, though. Maybe someday they'll fight back.
That's why we're still working to send Arnold Schwarzenegger back in time, right?
That's right. That's right.
That movie becomes very relevant then.
I regret everything I said. Please don't hold it against me.
So before we get you guys out of here, I got to ask you a question. Of course, with all the chaos in the world now, how do leaders capitalize on it? Rasmus, kick us off.
I feel like I get all of the politician questions in this. I mean, I think that's a difficult one. I am obviously from Denmark, so if you take political situations, I think, and actually my entire upbringing and my view of the world, I always went, hey, in my lifetime, and reminding you, I've lived through the Cold War. That was there when I was in existence. I never thought it would be this chaotic. And I thought that the whole thing had kind of settled down and we were about creating something better as humans and actually coming together to do that. I think there is a path back to that. But right now, there's just a lot of chaos that I'm not sure will make anything better or worse. But you can feel an angst in people that I've not felt for, I think, my entire lifetime, which is weird to experience. And for somebody who genuinely, I grew up with a grandparent who was in the resistance during World War II and heard his stories and was like mesmerized by all of that. What is it in the chaos and all of that? And then when it starts to feel like, hey, the foundation is not secure, it's difficult. And maybe that's when I've talked through all of this and made my thoughts up. Maybe that's the core lesson here. If your foundation is not certain, whether that's in the business or whether that's in geopolitics or whatever that is, then it becomes very hard for the individual to act. So similar to setting goals, if you still have a very clear goal, but the foundation is moving and the tectonic plates are moving every day, I think it's very, very hard to navigate. And that goes for politicians. It goes for for leadership. I mean, if you have a company where you're uncertain of where's the whole thing moving, I think it's also really difficult to deliver concise direction of where you want to be going. So I think, thank you for putting me on the spot there. And that illustrates exactly why I shouldn't be a politician. So thinking while you speak, that's never the best answer to.
Well, I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, a great CMO who's taken one of the most iconic companies public in the last couple of years. I can't tell you her name, but we're just kind of like commiserating a little bit about how much fear there is, to Rasmus' point, about being left behind. I mean, I use LinkedIn a lot, and so does my friend. And we go on there. Even LinkedIn, it's like sometimes you go on there and it feels like everyone's ahead of you, right? So I think social media has a tendency to over amplify what's actually really happening. Because then when you go speak to companies, after speaking to some of our customers lately, they're just getting started with their journey. They're still trying to figure it out. But they, of course, are also reading on social media, Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and others and so on. And so everyone kind of feels a little bit behind. So it can really lead to this kind of like extreme FOMO in some ways. But then the question is, what do you do about it? I think the key leadership quality that's required today more than ever is courage. Courage to lead from the front, courage to try new things, courage to be wrong, courage to admit that when you're wrong. I feel like there's so much like bravado and like always having to be right, never showing vulnerability, never showing that you're getting things wrong. Having the courage to be out there, whether you're a business leader or politician, lead from the front. Don't be afraid to go out there and experiment, try new things, get your hands dirty, but also then admit if things are going wrong, but also, of course, celebrate when they're going massively well, which they do oftentimes. But the key is don't get complacent and get stuck in what you're doing. You gotta keep pushing and trying, because I think if you don't, there is a decent chance that you could get some left behind a little bit. And that's not to be fear mongering. And when I say left behind, it's just like, because most industries are fairly competitive today. Even politics are competitive. So if you're not like pulling ahead and showcasing that courage and leadership, somebody else might. So it's just kind of, you use that as fuel to push you forward.
I love it. And I just want to harken back to what Rasmus was saying, right? Is what I've been seeing a lot, of course, is folks who feel the uncertainty, and that causes the inner chaos. But what you're mentioning, Rasmus, is that there is a limit to how much inner peace and tranquility you can get to when the world is chaotic. And so if you walk into an environment every day which feels destabilizing, there's only so much work you can do to try to get out of that. And so that's why I talk a lot about like creating the cultures for leaders, because if your folks are walking in and it feels like they're in the shit, they're not going to be able to get out of it. And so it's starting there. And so that's where I want to go with folks is this is an absolutely, you're right, Robin, this is a moment for opportunity. And the folks that take that courage and take those steps and try and experiment and fail and try again, they're going to be the ones who come out the other side with just more opportunities to find the magic that's somewhere. Now, before we get you out of here, of course, everyone go to zensai.com, ZENSAI.com. Can you tell us the book's coming out? Can you tell us a little bit about the book? And can folks sign up somewhere to get notified when it comes out?
We don't have a sign-up page yet, but that's coming soon. It's basically, this is this human success playbook, and it's really written as a leadership fable for the age of AI. So it's not a straightforward just business book I could see a gazillion of out there. This is meant more as a story of a company, of how they go through the transition from being a traditional company to be an AI-first company that uses the principles of human success to succeed. So it's much more of a story that has a lot of like aha moments, tension in it, and so on. Of course, deep learnings as well. It's coming out in the spring, and we're still settling the final date. It'll probably be in April. It's coming out, but stay tuned for more.
Amazing, folks. So I've dropped both Robin and Rasmus's LinkedIn in the podcast notes so you can connect with them there. Obviously, Zensai.com. And amazing, guys. Thanks for joining me on the show and sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you, Rob, and thanks for pushing me into politics.
Next election, folks, vote for us.
That's a...
Everyone, thank you so much for listening. And we'll see you all.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. See ya.